Hey John, what's up, buddy? Hey man, sorry it took me so long to get back to you. I watched your videos and read through what you're dealing with, and dude, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Trust me, I know how it is though. Just share something just so it doesn't think it's just you happening here. I restored this cluster, and it has been fighting me all week with little gremlins. I finally got it all figured out here, but just real quick, so I watched your video and I see some red flags that could possibly solve some of your issues. I'm going to do two videos. All right, in the second video, I'm going to show you what I would test on your board first, just to get a ground base to make sure that everything here is working correctly, and then kind of work your way out from there. But the thing I saw when you started your Jeep sounds great. I don't hear ticking. I don't hear anything like that. And that's important to note, because after it started, it looked like your oil pressure stays low, and it kind of moved up a little bit as it was, getting a little RPM there. Where typically what happens is when you start it, your oil pressure starts high, 60 to 80, and then will start to kind of work its way down, because as the oil warms itself up, that pressure starts to come down. So if your temperature gauge, or excuse me, if your fuel gauge and your oil gauge work, then your temperature gauge has to work. So if you get those two guys working, then the temperature gauge must be working, or at least the CBR inside the temperature gauge. If you get those two guys working, there's some other element outside stopping the temperature gauge from registering as it should. One of the first things I would say I'd check on the board real quick is the ground itself. So the primary ground pin, this one right here, I would backtrack this wire. So I would clean this pin and then backtrack this wire to ensure it has a solid ground right there, because it's the primary ground for the cluster itself. So this is the primary ground right here. I would make sure that this guy is backfed. I like the one on the fender, but this one right here, I would really clean this up and make sure that wire is good. So if you have any issues with that black wire right there, then it's going to create all kinds of havoc for you there. So the screws and bolts do need all be in, grounding the metal plates to the motherboard itself. So these screws right here are also grounds as well, so they ground it all together there. And like I said, it's undergrounded, so any one of these things could be causing all of the things. And I know that's silly, but it just could be. So there's that. Also, let me see. All right, so you can see how this fits in that little groove right there. Now, what I found is that if you've replaced your gauges with new gauges, sometimes these don't fit in there perfectly, and you'll get a little bit of distance, or this will be up a little bit, not allowing it to really make true contact. So you see the little pin, you can see the silver pin right there. So this has to fit in there comfortably. So on new gauges, what I always have to do is, should have had it here, but on the back side, I just kind of cut out a little bit of it so it fits in there, or I bend open the pin a little bit, or I should say the centering pin, if that makes sense. So these guys right here, this is for the amp meter here, but just I bend these out a little bit so the new gauge can sit in there comfortably. And if you have all those temperature gauges, I really doubt it's all, it's your temperature gauge. I think there's like a connection issue somewhere. But I'm going to show you how to ohm your board, because where I see it's repaired could be the phrase catastrophic. So you could have some other issues right there. But I'll just show you how to ohm the board out, and that's you'll know immediately whether or not yay or nay if that's your board or not, and you kind of move forward from there. All right, here comes the second one. Hey John, all right, so looking at the board here, man, I see that your primary damage is right about here, or I should say it looks like where it was repaired, and I could be wrong, let me know if I'm wrong, but these ribbons are actually really important. So if you have any damage here, it could affect your oil gauge, your temperature gauge, and your fuel gauge. So what I would do here is basically just ohm out the board itself. Okay, I actually did it in the original video, but it didn't. I screwed it up, so we didn't make it in the video. Before jumping to that, though, you actually don't need your radio noise suppressor to test this board. So the radio noise suppressor really just, it keeps that staticky noise out of the radio, and it really doesn't play a role for jumping any of this together here. So just to eliminate that from, you know, the possibility of issues. All right, so first test right here, let me just go from one side of the radio noise suppressor over here. All right, so I have my set to ohms and resistance. I'm just looking to see how much resistance that this might have, and the highest that you want, or I should say the highest that would be allowed and still have a working board, is 1.0. So anything above 1.0, it's probably an issue there. So, all right, so checking here to here. So all I'm doing is checking right around here, following that ribbon. All right, so boom, boom. All right, show them on the screen. All right, so right there I have 0.2, 0.1. So it looks like that's pretty good right there. All right, I'm gonna go from this connection here to this ribbon. Boom. Come on. Okay, so that's zeroed out right there, so that's okay. Let's see. All right, now right here, right in that section, I'm just going to stick to this section right here to kind of show what I would do literally in your situation. So there's a ribbon that runs all the way up to your oil gauge. So from here, put one of your, let's see, leads here, follow that ribbon all the way around here, follow me with the camera. Okay, all the way up and here. Okay, so I got here and here. Now what my resistance? So I got 0.1. So 0.1 is still okay. All right, and then from here, working my way up to my fuel gauge. Okay, that's 0.0. Okay, so we're good right there. So the only resistance I really have is basically running from the radio noise to this pin here. All right, and that's not enough to really do a lot of damage here, or I should say to stop things from happening. But the first thing I would do is just test your board itself. So ribbon to ribbon, just follow these ribbons and, excuse me, follow the ribbons and just make sure that you have no resistance, or I should say very little resistance. Like I said, the highest resistance that you would be acceptable would be 1.0. So see how high the resistance is, if any, and if there is resistance, then it could very well just be the board itself. If you have no resistance there, then basically reverse engineer back into the items I threw at you in the first video there. So just a stepping stone process. But again, the grounds. I cannot stress grounding enough. So remember, make sure that all your ground spots are clean. Make sure that the hardware you have holding it on is clean. Make sure that the backboard that it is sandwiched to is clean. Make sure that the gauge itself is actually sitting flush against that, and the metal that it's sitting against is clean. And all in all, it'll probably be this. So in the perfect picture, what should happen is you start the vehicle, okay, your oil pressure climbs higher, and your fuel goes immediately to however much fuel that you have right there. And then your oil pressure starts to work its way back down as it warms itself up. So, all right, that's it. Hope this helps, man. All right.